What is going on, guys? We are back with another video, and we have my friend Steve's 2022 Mustang GT pulled in here, and today we are going to be installing an ESS supercharger kit, some FIC 1000cc injectors, oil pump gear, crank gear, and a Barton short third shifter. Behind us is a bone stock 22 Mustang GT, with the only exception has the ML tune on it. So I tuned this car at Mustangs at Daytona. Time. It sounds really cool. Bone stock, tune only. We added a burble mode in sport mode, which is kind of cool because you can turn it on and off. It adds quite a bit of power, really peps these cars up, but he is ready for the next step. And below us, we have an ESS G3X. We got to tear this down, pull the timing cover off, and pull the oil pan down, get these oil pump gear and crank gears installed. I do quite a bit of builds, but I don't always film them, so I'm gonna try to bring you guys along the way. We're also gonna be dyno tuning this car, and we're gonna see what it makes. This car is, like I said, bone stock, so we're only doing some minor mods. I mean, it's boost, but it has stock cats on it. It might have an X pipe or something similar, but we'll take a look. I'm really excited to jump into this one, and we'll see how much power it ends up making with stock exhaust, basically. So I'm definitely a little picky in terms of customer cars that I work on. This car is bone stock, super clean inside and out. I think it only has like 6,000 miles on it. It's got digital cluster, really nice, 6,900 miles. So car is super nice. We're gonna get started tearing this thing down, really taking everything apart here, front bumper off. If we were just installing the ESS blower, we could probably have the install knocked out in probably a few hours, but the oil pump gear, crank gear job takes quite a bit of time. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so got a lot done. I actually really only worked on it from about 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, so let's just say a good 3 hours. A lot of that time was spent with my balancer tool. I've always used this Chrysler style claw, but it just doesn't work right. I don't know if they changed the balancer or if it's just harder when the balancer's in the car, but I got the balancer tool on order. It's really the only thing holding us up from pulling the timing cover off and really getting at those oil pump gears and crank gear. But I went ahead and loosened the oil pan. Oil pan is completely loose. loose and it's pretty torn down. So I did record a time lapse of tearing it down. I know it stopped somewhere midway, but hopefully you got most of the stuff. But this is a fairly easy teardown. Brand new car, taped up the ports. Everything's still pretty much sealed up with the besides the oil pan that's kind of broken the seal, but everything's pretty sealed up. We don't have to worry about contaminants. Drain the oil, drain the coolant. It does make a mess. I mean, no matter what way you slice it, you're gonna have to have, you know, a mess cleanup. But overall, everything's looking pretty good, staying organized. Got our parts takeoff stuff over here. I think in theory you might not have to take the intake manifold off, but honestly, it just clears up so much space. So I go ahead and always pull the intake, 6 bolts and a few plugs and it's out. So we're staying organized, got all the bolts in bags. We haven't even pulled the blower out. I guess we'll probably do that when we start up the next clips, but that's the teardown. I didn't want to complicate things too much. I also pulled the interior parts of the shifter out. So all I got to do is go underneath and get started on the shifter. Probably knock that out tomorrow, and then the tool comes in Saturday. So then we'll be able to go ahead and finish really oil pump gear, crank gear install. That's a little bit of a timely process, but we'll go ahead and get that knocked out. Start getting it back together, and then we'll be mounting the intercooler up, the blower. I mean, this is it's such an easy kit. Oil pump gear and crank gear is definitely a great idea to do. Good supporting mod. If you don't have to do oil pump gear and crank gear, this blower can be installed so quickly. Even these 18s, they made the bumpers so much easier to pull. I'm a big fan of the ESS kit. You guys saw that previously we did that on Brad's 04 Mustang GT, ESS G3X, and that's exactly what this is. So they work really well with these Gen 3 cars. This one's a manual, but Gen 3 10R80 ESS cars are fast. I don't know if you guys have been on the internet, but in terms of like draggies, 60 to 130s, they fly. And you rarely see Pro-charged or Vortec or Paxton cars getting in those times. Usually it's a twin turbo car like that. So really cool. We're gonna pick it up in the next clip. All right, so we got the valve covers popped, ready to pull the timing cover, got the balancer off, got the new tool in. If you guys want to pick one of those up. Works better than the claw that I've been using forever. Amazon, super cheap, works pretty well. It doesn't come with a fancy case, but it did the job fairly well. We're gonna pull the timing cover off and get started on oil pump gear and crank gear. Oil pan is already dropped, it's loose, as you can see, so pretty much ready to rock. Okay guys, so Gen 3 oil pump gear, crank gear install. I just watched a few videos and I have the install guide just to refresh myself, but it's actually not that complicated. I will talk about the process here a little bit, but this is the way it comes. Something that you gotta remember when you're doing this is basically your marks will almost never line up. You know, you can be like, oh, this is not in time, but basically as soon as you make one revolution, these marks aren't in line. So some lazy people would like mark, you know, where that is and then mark down there. That's just not the right way to do it. The Ford manual basically gives you all the information on how to properly take the chains off and put them on. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the spark plugs out as well, but there's an easy way if you disassemble it properly. You basically set yourself up to basically pull the oil pump out, put the oil pump gear in, and then put it back, rotate the crankshaft a few different ways, and you'll be good to go. You'll be perfectly in time. I find that the Ford guide is a great source of information. So we'll be back with that here shortly. All right, so we got everything torn down. I decided to pull the valve covers because it would be easier just to see everything. So valve covers out. I pulled all 8 spark plugs out. They look brand new, pretty much all good to go. We're not going to be reusing those. So it wasn't really an inconvenience to pull them out. What I went ahead and did, where everything was, I want to go ahead and get the keyway of the crank to 12 o'clock. But you also need to make sure that the right arm mark with the arrow facing up is facing up here. So you take the passenger side chain off first, and then what we're going to do is rotate this to 5 o'clock and take this side off next. Taking this off in order is going to save a lot of time. It's also going to keep all the valves and everything basically in the head, so you're not going to have to worry about that. Cool thing is we won't have to worry about anything with the secondary chains, so basically we are good to go. I'm gonna go ahead right now and pop off our timing chain tensioner, and we'll take the whole chain and everything off. And typically we do see a little bit of oil there. These are oil fed. Go ahead and pull that out. Go ahead and pull the guide right off. And pull the chain off. So the chain is marked with colored links on both ends. That's what's going to help us line up the dots when we go ahead and put this back together. Take this guide off. Brand new car, guides look brand new. The next step, which I'm gonna have to double check, I just wanna make sure that I'm accurate, but I believe all I have to do is take the keyway and move this to the 5 o'clock position. That's going to safely get this head in line, ready to take off, and then we'll be able to pull the oil pump housing out. Oil pan is already dropped, so the oil pump will go ahead and come right out. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is move and rotate the crank to that 5 o'clock position. Sometimes it'll, basically it goes exactly where it's supposed to go. And you can see the arrow, the mark is pointing face up. So I believe we should be good to go. It's not at 6, it's at 5. So it looks pretty good. I believe the next step is just pull this off. I'm just going to verify. I know that when this goes back together, an interesting step is that you do go ahead and line up the marks, on there and there, but then when you go, we leave it in the 5 o'clock position, but when we go to retime this side, we not only have to go to 12 o'clock, but we have to go 360 degrees on the crank back to this 5 o'clock position and then to 12 o'clock. So it's like 1.5 plus rotations rather than just go to 12 o'clock. If you go to 12 o'clock, it will be out of time. And that is what so many people have messed up when doing a Gen 2 and Gen 3 timing procedure. I've done a lot of research. I have the Ford guide. The Ford guide just doesn't tell me how to tear it down, so I'm using a few different references for that. But everything seems to make sense, so I'm gonna go ahead and double check that this is in the right position, and then take it off, pull the oil pump housing out, and we'll do basically the easiest part, which is putting the gears in. That's like super easy. Take off our tensioner. Go. So we'll use a bench vise to go ahead and bleed these down. And then you just basically put a paper clip, Allen key, or something of the sort right in there. This will hold that, so when we go back to put it together, pull the pin out once everything's lined up, and it'll have some nice tension on it. It's a good sign when the crank sprocket moves around freely. Cars that see a lot of abuse, the crank sprockets do get beat up. So definitely something to keep in mind. So all of these bolts are different. There's an 8 mil down here on the left side. So, and then there's that one and that one. 9 millimeter. Look at that one. It's barely even scratched. I don't use that very often. Okay. This should come right out nice and easy. There we go. So that way that didn't move. Check this out. Nice and smooth. Brand new car. Now, Radon's was cracked and stuck on the crank, which was wild. We won't need this. These don't typically break. However, in Radon's case, his 18 or 19 or 2020 Mustang, that we did oil pump gear and crank gear, and it had a failed rocker arm, it also had a cracked crank sprocket. Wiggle the old oil pump right up and out. One thing that can make your life a little simpler when installing is to notice the orientation of the gear. You can see that with the way that locks on the back end of the crank. So we can put the new gear in that same orientation and then it'll slide on nice. Otherwise, you just go ahead and move it, you know, when you put it on. But seeing as we have a camera and I'll try to use my memory, we can try to get that in the same location so it slides right on, goes on super nice. The Gen 3s use that basically kind of like almost like an O-ring right there. And we have oil starting to come out everywhere. Oh boy, messy. So we got a set of Boundary oil pump gears. We sell these. We sell pretty much everything here except ESS kits are only install only. So go ahead and pop this guy open. This part number is good for 2011 up. So basically 11 Coyote all the way up to 23. This car's a 22. The only difference between the different cars, so 15 up uses a different crank sprocket, which is what we have. You can see the 15 indication there, and it does say that 2015 and up Ford Coyote. So we got the oil pump gears themselves right here. The idea is these brake and at RPM. I personally don't think these gears are as weak as people say they are. Drop them from head height, the outer ring will typically snap on the OEM. We don't think they'll do it on the billet gears. The only person I know that's actually dropped billet gears was Justin Starkey, so there's a video of that somewhere. And they didn't break. So they're definitely really nice. They also now say this side up, which is cool. I don't think they used to say that, so cool little thing. You can tell there's a little bit of assembly lube in here as well. And then it also comes with some nice lube to kind of get in there for, you know, your first start. This is kind of their QC. You got a signature, you got a date. So I like that. It's got a serial number. So this isn't just mass produced and not checked. So you can see that it is checked, which is really nice. This is a T30. Quick release. Make sure you use the right size because you only have one shot on loosening these. I find that the 3/8 impact is the best way to loosen them because if you do it by hand, this pump housing will start moving and it's just going to be kind of a pain. Now you do have to torque these. I'll have to get the torque spec, but do not strip them. You'll have a bad time. Basically, you'll cost yourself $100 because it's going to be easier to get a new pump housing. There we go. We'll just put that off to the side. Take these bad Larrys and you toss them away. They didn't break. They really don't necessarily break unless you drop them from a large height. And I actually find that it's very hard to break them when they're together. If you take the outer ring apart so it doesn't have the inner support, then the outer ring will break fairly easily. That inner gear, I don't think it will break very easily. So, just something I've noticed over the years. It says this side up, our serial number matches, and then we're just gonna go ahead and put a little bit of this assembly lube in here. It's probably not like the most necessary thing, but it doesn't hurt, you know, to have a little bit extra lube on startup. Just kind of get that in, work it into these different areas. It's just lube, so it's not too much different than oil. We'll kind of mix in there. Cool, nice and gross. And we're pretty much good. We'll try to get a baseline for our little marks. I guess our marks are on the other side, but okie dokie. So 89 inch-pounds. I just went through and did both. Definitely need 2 hands for that. Sometimes an extra person will help you, but we should be good to go ahead and put the pump back in the car. Got the gears in. I just used our little marks that we made to kind of line up. This makes it easier to get it on the crank, in theory. We'll see if it works. It's just kind of a, try to cheat it around so I don't, you know, kind of have to keep spinning it. It may or may not work, so. In our case, worked out pretty well. These do need to be torqued. I'm just gonna get it tight enough. There's 2 holes. Yeah, there we go. All right, we'll show that process again, but basically bleed down the tensioner to the point where you can get an Allen or something similar like this. Probably gonna wanna make that flush in the backside because obviously you gotta bolt it on. But basically you bolt it on, make sure it's nice and good, and then you pull the pin out, and then good to go. All right, so we got the boundary crank sprocket, 15. Very important that we actually have a 15. Usually these don't really have any issues, but it's always a good idea. Just take a look, make sure nothing happened along the way, shipping or whatever. Make sure you don't have any chipped teeth. Probably teeth. This is going to be your timing mark, as you can see right there. This is your keyway. So the crank is still in our 5 o'clock position. So we're going to just go ahead and start sliding that on there. Just got to find the keyway, and nice enough, slides right on. Notice that larger ridge, it's right there on the outside. It's going to make sure everything's all nice and aligned. So, like we talked about before, colored links. Go ahead and put colored link. My eyes are not the best, but there's an arrow there. Oh. Is that or that? Finer colored link is there. So what we're gonna have to do here is kind of get some flashlight in here. We'll want to double check, make sure these marks are 100%. So I'm just gonna double check. This one's just a little confusing, I'll be honest. Just maybe it's the angle I'm looking at it. Oh, nope, you can see it right there. Actually on the sprocket itself, not only the arrow, but the sprocket has a little line there. That's gonna confirm, see right here? If you zoom in, see the little line on the sprocket itself, that confirms that it is 100% correct. This and that. So once this gets tension on it, that should be locked in place. So let's go ahead and put the tensioners and guides. So after we're done fumbling around with everything here, we gotta then go double check to make sure the guide or the colored link hasn't moved. We will torque that, of course. Right. That's that. All right, so everything is on in place. Sometimes you do have to move the balancer or the crank just a tiny bit to kind of get some slack where you need it. So that's what we did, just a tiny bit. We can verify 100% this mark is on. You can see the little notch there. And then if we look at our sprocket, this tooth and that tooth, this is in the center of that. And even if we can actually knock this back just a tiny bit and verify, that is 100% on the mark there and there. Use a non-ratcheting one, because if the engine starts to spring back for whatever reason and you lose your place, it can be a little difficult. So we're right at 6 o'clock. We need to go all the way around 360 degrees back to 6 o'clock. it'll take a little bit longer because we're not using a ratcheting breaker bar. Also want to make sure none of the teeth are jumping around or doing anything crazy. See how it just kind of autopilot? You know, kind of want it to take off a little bit. So this is where you'd mess up if you only went to 12 o'clock. That is not where we need to go. You need to go all the way. Keep going. To our 6. So we have now gone 360 degrees. You will notice that your marks will no longer line up, and now we need to go to 12 o'clock. See, started to do that autopilot thing. I don't want to kick it too far past. So we're approaching 12 o'clock. And I think that's in position for us to set up the passenger side. I think we can see it right there, right? So that's the mark right there, and it's good to go. So you just gotta watch. We'll probably have to put it back up in the air to verify after everything's on, make sure that's still on, but that is in time right now. This and this. Good. All right, so we just verified both with that camera and by eyesight. That is 100% on, and we are 100% on there. So now we can go ahead and pull our tensioner out. Again, they're not going to do anything too crazy because we obviously just bled it down, but should be good to go. Everything is in time. We did the 360, then to 12. That is the most crucial step. That's what people usually mess up. Other than that one step, this is basically just lining up the marks. There's nothing fancy about it. I took my time with it. I think, you know, it can be done faster, but it's important to take your time, make sure you're doing it right. And the cool thing is I have it all on camera, so I can look back and, you know, show myself that it is right if it were to be an issue. But I think it all looks 100%. So I'm going to torque all these bolts there, all around. Clean off some RTV here. We'll get the oil pan kind of lined up, timing cover lined up, and go from there. All right, so we got 8 plugs, gapped at 26 thou. Good for about 10 pounds of boost. We're gonna toss these in and work on getting the engine completely sealed up. All right, so engine is pretty close to sealed up. I just gotta do the oil pan and some odds and ends, but I figured we've gone this long and we haven't even looked at the supercharger. So let's go ahead and take a look. This is an ESS G3X. Comes with basically everything you need. Like I said, if I wasn't doing oil pump here and crank here on this car, it would have been done in pretty much a day or a few hours. Probably about half a day is what it takes to do one of these kits. So it says instruction guide, head unit oil fill procedure. Those are good ideas. And a checklist of everything that came in here. We got a 120 mil pulley. That's what we're gonna be running. And yeah. Ooh, that's nice. Really nice black intercooler. So that's the G3 intercooler. This is most likely the blower, which is actually extremely light. Woo! There it is. Oh, look at that, one hand. 700 horsepower, one hand. Oh, just kidding. So, G3X, That is looking pretty sweet. We have a black bracket as well. Getting the full black on black effect with this car. Last ESS kit, I think, was silver that we did. Yep, black bracket. Okay, so I got the front crash bar removed. Oil pan is on, which is sweet. So front crash bar removed. I'm gonna go ahead and start installing the very first part, which is the intercooler. We pulled the active grill shutters off. This will not be needed. We got all the hardware there tucked away. So this is gonna go in his pile of parts that don't go back on. For now, be off to the side. We're gonna start with the intercooler. Very excited. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the blow off valve on, and yeah, then we're gonna start mounting it up. Very first part of the supercharger kit. All right guys, so I'm on a roll, so I'll just keep on going. Haven't put the bumper support on, so that's just held there temporarily. Bracket is on. Most of everything here is back together. AC stretch bolt, water pump. We got the 90-degree change on the thermostat housing. We do have to put the radiator and fan in there, but it's kind of nice having the extra space. I'm gonna go ahead and get the FIC 1000cc injectors. I have these on the website if you guys are trying to pick some up, and the intake manifold. So we're gonna go ahead and get these injectors tossed in there. All right guys, I think we're gonna throw in the towel for tonight, about 8 p.m. So I worked on it an extra 3 hours and got a lot done. Intercooler mounted up. Charge pipe is just mocked up. I just want to make sure I kind of have an idea of where everything goes. Kind of have to pull it out anyways, or at least out of the way, so I can put the radiator and fan in. And intake manifolds on, injectors are on. A lot of the vacuum lines, a lot of things are plugged back in, and blower's mounted. So this is how charge pipe works as far as I know. The only thing I found a little goofy is where this AC is going to kind of sit with that. But remember, this is not on the radiator. It kind of mounts to the radiator. So yeah, we got that 90-degree on the thermostat housing. But that's what it's looking like. Boosted 2022 Mustang. Pretty good, productive day. All right guys, so we are back from FL2K. We were working on finishing up the ESS 2022 Mustang install. So we are adding fluids. I put oil, put some coolant in it. And now for the supercharger, they actually include this full bottle of Royal Purple Synchro Max. This is what we use in the supercharger. And I find it crazy. You only have to put 3 ounces, or at least to start. This is the oil fill procedure. Typically, you're pretty much just going to change the oil on the supercharger every time you do an oil change on the engine. Assuming you do normal oil changes on a performance car, like around every 2,500, 3,000 miles. Nope, you can just hit the gas. Okay guys, so we are also installing a Barton shifter on this build. Got the stock shifter already pulled out. I find it easiest to do these by just go ahead and pull the drive shaft, pull the trans cross member, get it out of the way, and let everything hang out. I already pulled the stock shifter obviously, and go ahead and install it. We're gonna be doing the trans mount on this one. So let's go ahead and get it installed. All right guys, here it is, the installed flat stick. So there's obviously options to retain, reverse lockout. We went with the flat stick option. This is also trans mounted as opposed to body mounted. Barton does give you both options to do that. To get in reverse now, you just push down and up. So pretty simple, you know, nothing too crazy of an install. Feels pretty good. Obviously this is the MT82 D4, but yeah. Feels good. Installs pretty much the same for all 15 to 17 models. So yeah, if you guys were wondering, there's a little collar here. You just basically got to cut it apart, and then you can kind of tuck this right under there. I think that's the only downside of doing this, is like that's not reversible. Everything else is reversible. But if you like the shifter, you're never going to take it out. So, all right, guys. So we got the car pulled out, driven. It's pretty much dialed, but got to make sure we got enough fuel. So I was back and forth on the DW400 and this, but I see a lot of issues with the DW400, or it might complicate things more. Fuel pump booster, we're going for 700 horsepower. This is going to be perfectly fine. And if he wants to swap out the fuel system later, we can do a real fuel system. This will give us plenty of headroom to make 700. So I've already pulled the rear seat. Really simple to install fuel pump booster. It basically goes in line with this. Get a nice ground, and that's it. It's really, really simple. All right, guys, so we got the ESS car on the dyno. We already got it kind of tuned, pretty much dialed in, but we're gonna do some dyno runs. I figured let's get some dyno numbers on it and see what it does. Stock cats, stock IMRCs, just basically an ESS blower, fuel pump booster, 120 mil pulley. We're on 93. I brought some boost in case we need it, but right now it's just straight 93 pump gas. We're gonna see what it lays down. Should be 7.5, 8 pounds of boost, up to 7,200. We might see, I don't know, maybe 10. I don't have the boost sensor hooked up. We might hook it up, might not, I don't know. Let's see what it does, and we'll get some timing in it. The tune in it right now is pretty soft, so we'll kind of get some timing in it and see what it ends up making. All right, I forgot my camera, everything, so we'll have to make do with this. It's gonna be the first pull. $624. Not too bad. Not too bad. We're gonna take a look at the log and see. 624, 471. Not a bad start. We're gonna take a look, see what we can improve on. Too bad. I think we got into cat protection up top. Gonna look at the log, make some adjustments. Okay, guys, so the car's only making about 620, which is not bad. We'll probably send it off on, you know, about that setup for ignition timing on your regular 93. But chances are we have some bad fuel in here. It happens. It's 93, but you know it varies from tank to tank. So I'm gonna go throw some boostain in it, see what it does. This should help solve our octane issue. So basically just add this into the tank and we'll be good to go. Okay, so if I had to guess, there'll be no knock on this one. Okay, let's see what we do. Got it pretty well dialed in now. $694. All right, guys, so the ESS car is just finished up. So we're gonna deliver it to the customer tomorrow. Hopefully get to go for a quick ride in it and see what he thinks. But made just under 700 horsepower, stock cats, MT82 car, Barton short throw shifter, fuel pump booster, super clean car. I mean, it's got like no miles on it. Got the ML93 tune. Love tuning these cars and learning from scratch. Looking killer. ESS G3X. It's got the blow-off valve that comes with it. I know there's some controversy about that, but no problems with it. Got the intake hooked up. Got the stealthy black intercooler. You can barely tell it's boosted. You can only see that little silver coupler. Awesome car.
Trying to blow third gear up on my first try.
Yeah, I mean, stock clutch still, so, you know. Held the power on the dyno in fourth, so. And you can rev it all the way to 8,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's goes all the way out there.
Just going easy because I've been driving my truck for a month and it's a dog.
Yeah, and you saw the traction control on too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll probably spin first and second pretty good if you turn that off. Yeah, I think it boogies a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Not too bad.
No, I